Welcome to my podcast, Extraordinary with Neman. My name is Neman, and I'm your host. When I started this podcast, a lot of people ask me, is it going to be a vegan podcast? And I said, I don't think necessarily it's going to be a vegan podcast, but what does make podcast vegan? Is it guests? Is it a story? Is it the things that we're going to be talking about? Because I always try to have a different topic. But today, yes, it is going to be a vegan podcast because I absolutely want to dedicate one episode to that because it's a huge part of who I am. As I said, a lot of you know me as a CEO and founder of Kill My Name. We're trying to reach even wider audience than that, but so far my Hungry Kales are the biggest supporters of this. So I would love to introduce the absolutely amazing person I'm extremely excited to have this conversation with. She's a podcaster too. She's an actress, but also animal rights activist. Jamie Logan.
You imported me. Hi.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jamie, from coming all the way from New York. Needed to import the guest in the city, in the studio, so that we can have this awesome conversation. When I was thinking to dedicate episode of veganism, I really couldn't think about better guest to that. To me, you're kind of, that's it. So I'm super excited to chat about that. But first, I want to welcome you to Chicago.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. And it's an honor.
Will try to show you a little bit of Chicago, okay?
Okay.
And we'll see what a New Yorker thinks of our city. But before we go into our conversation about our topic of the day, I wanted to just get to know you a little bit better before all of this, right? And I just want to kind of know where you're coming from, right? You were born in New York, when, how, and just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I would love to. Well, I just like to consider myself first and foremost a girl that just loves dogs. Like, I just love dogs, and I just have managed to extend that same love to all animals, you know, birds, cows, chickens, turkeys, fish. And I never actually saw my life going down the path of activism per se, but I was born in New York City, and I still live in New York. And I grew up, you know, I have two younger brothers. My parents divorced when I was super young. And from a young age, I was always very independent. I think I was always able to, you know, be strong-willed, kind of form my own opinions, and I stuck by them. And, you know, I like to get my way, I guess you could say.
Good.
And and then being that I have two younger brothers too, and being the oldest, it's like, you know, you gotta fight for yourself a little bit.
Good. I feel more middle child energy needs to fight more for, but maybe because like there were boys, like I can totally feel how you know, everything would fall on you, and like you would have to do a lot of things. But you said your parents divorced at the young age. Do you remember that? Was that like a hard period for you, or you just simply, many kids don't even care?
Yeah. So I was 5, and I don't actually really remember them together much. I think I get flashbacks of my life at home being like super young, and my earliest childhood memories of that would have just been them fighting. So I think it was definitely for the better that they split up and are no longer together, and they're both much happier that way. But it definitely was an adjustment, like having to then see your parents dating other people. And I think, you know, I was saying that I kind of always fought to get my way, and I was always in control and in charge because I felt that I needed to protect my brothers, and that you know, even when drama was happening or our parents were fighting, like being the oldest, I kind of was that strong-willed, strong opinionated. You know, I think my parents were sometimes afraid of my reaction to things.
Okay.
Actually, it's a funny story. When they brought home my middle brother, they were afraid that how I would react to him. So they like hesitantly brought me into the room at like 2 years old. So from a young age, like, I guess I was a disruptor. Like, I had that forceful energy.
Okay, perfect. And then tell me about growing up in New York. Well, how is that like? It's one of the biggest cities on earth.
Yeah.
You know, I see about that in the movies.
Yeah. So being born and raised there, it's like I don't know any different. But what I can tell you is that it exposed me to so much culture from a young age. I mean, everything from the arts to different kinds of people to my school. It wasn't just like a white high school. It was like every single background of people were there. I had gay best friends. So I think it made me very accepting of all people.
That's beautiful.
And then when I went outside of the city for college, I was like shocked at how sheltered some of my friends were. Like I was so independent that I was taking the subway at like 12 by myself. And I remember I had a few friends from Jersey. I went to Rutgers, come into the city, and we were going to spend the weekend at my place. And they were confused as to how to take public transportation. And they were like, wait, we're going to go on this thing by ourselves? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to take the bus by ourselves.
Good. What's your relationship with family now?
Yeah. So I think I've reached the point where I see my parents as people and not just as these authority figures. And I really do love my family so much, but we live in different places. And I think the animal rights scene kind of made me distance myself a little bit from some people. And we can get into that a little later on, but it's, harder for me to go to family Thanksgivings and dinners when there's a ton of animal products there.
Oh yeah, I can imagine how would you feel and the things that you would say and how would that make them feel.
Yeah.
Which shouldn't be our concern, but good. Okay, so I immediately want to start learning about a little bit about your eating habits when you were a kid, and when did that start changing?
Yeah, I think as a kid, from what my parents tell me, I loved everything. I was that kid that was like, can we go for sushi and get shrimp shumai and all these different kinds of foods. I loved diversity. I loved many different cuisines. I was not picky at all. I remember my dad taking me to Chinese restaurants and getting duck, which is so weird to say now. But I think that goes to show that if I could change my eating habits, literally anybody can. So yeah, I grew up in a household where meat was probably not at every meal, but most.
80-90% of the meals.
Yeah. And my mom, I remember we always had a snack cabinet, which was filled with Chips Ahoy and Hershey's Kisses. And every single kid ever wanted to come over to my house after school because we had the best snacks. So I grew up on that stuff. And yeah. And then when I was I guess 12, 13, I started to slowly question the food system a little bit.
Already at that young age, 12, 13 years old? Yeah. Okay. So tell me about those first changes and first questions of the food system that you're having.
So growing up in the city, you don't see farmed animals all the time. There's not a cow walking down Madison Park, or Park Avenue. It's really the only time that you see these farmed animals is if you go to a zoo or when they're on your plate. Right? So I never actually questioned the food system until I was forced to see it. I was visiting my grandparents in Indiana one summer, and we were driving in the car, and there was a huge metal livestock truck that drove alongside us. And it was a really, really hot summer day. And I remember looking out the window of the car and seeing upwards of 50 pigs inside of this big metal truck. And they were panting. They didn't have any food. They didn't have any water. And their little eyes were just peering through the hole. And my dog was sitting next to me in the car. And I was just looking back and forth at this very beloved animal that was sitting next to me and these other animals that were not that different from my dog in this truck headed to their deaths. And as much as I tried, still to this day, I cannot get that image out of my head of these smart and intelligent, sweet souls. Literally,
they're so cute.
They're so cute.
It's they're as cute, if not even cuter than dogs.
Oh my God.
Pigs are adorable.
Yeah. And
they're weird. Like there is a science that proves their intelligence, that like they're often more intelligent than the dogs are, that they can learn the tricks. They sit down when once you want to give them the treat. And it's heartbreaking. A couple of days ago, I shared this reel on my story where it said, dog and a pig meet, and then the pig asks, oh, where you headed? And dog says like, oh, I'm going to the beach. And then pig says like, oh, sounds like fun. I hope I'm going to the beach.
And you're gonna break my heart.
I know. And it's just so wild that it takes like so much for people. And even for us, it took so long. And now some people don't want to even think about it, how there is so much similarity in between pigs and dogs. They're really not that different at all. And when people were like, oh, but the pig tastes good. Like it's horrifying to even say it, but I'm sure the dog would not taste any different. That like it, it's just, it's animal anyway. So, and there's a places where they're even eating dogs and people get so mad about it, but like would let the pigs just die and eat them. Okay, but you are in that car and you have seen that, and these are some of the first thoughts that you are processing of like, this is wrong, and what do you do about it?
So we go home that night, and for dinner, my grandparents are serving some type of ham or pork product, and that was the first time I said, nope, I don't want that. I'm not eating that. And it was the first time I had made the connection between that food on the plate and that once living animal.
And those eyes.
Yes.
That you have seen. Yeah.
Because I feel that we are so disconnected from that process. Like when you look at the food on your plate, you're not thinking that this once was a intelligent being that had thoughts, that had desires, that had a will to live, that fought for their lives, and so that was the first time I actually made that connection, which is so interesting. And I think back, to before I was vegan, and I'm like, come on, Jamie, like, how did you not connect it before? And, now I realize that, well, I was fed so much fake advertising saying that the animals are happy and that they're on grassy fields and that they die quickly, or, that these animals were here for us and that we have to eat them. I didn't know another way of life. I didn't know any vegans.
Yeah.
So that was the first step, is being like, I'm not eating pigs anymore. And, you go about your life, you're around your friends, everybody's doing it. It kind of begs the question, how could something so widespread be so bad?
Yeah.
And so immoral, right? So then I came across a few videos on Facebook and it was slaughterhouse videos, and I had never seen anything like that. And I remember the first time I came across one of those kind of videos, I clicked on it and then I saw some of the violence and I just immediately clicked away and shut it off and didn't want to look at it again, but it stuck in my mind. And I think that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to cut out red meat. And then one by one, it went chicken, and fish is actually a funny story how I cut that out. It took me a little bit of time to connect with fish, because I think we don't look at them and think that they're cute as cute. Now I do, but
of course. They travel in families. That's the cutest thing for me. Like,
they're adorable.
They know who the mama is, and like it's just so much connection. And you just pull one, disappear, and like they turn around. There's like, where is the family member? It's just like it absolutely, and so many. Science that proves that they also can feel and think and absolutely feel the pain. But now that you mentioned those slaughterhouses and like videos and stuff, it's a very similar process for me. I was mostly following PETA, or I told you in Montenegro, I used to call it PETA. I was following videos like that. And I remember saying, I've never seen any of those animals that they're not fighting till the last minute, because they're so sweet. It also breaks my heart that we always kill the sweetest ones, the pigs, the cows, the chicken, the ones that are not going to be hurting humans, the most peaceful ones that want a peace with us. They want our cuddles. They want to, go on a grass and play. I watch cows playing with the balls, and it just, again, very similar to dogs. And it's just wild that we are mostly doing this to animals who are very peaceful and pacific and want just to make peace with humans. And then that moment when they are about to lose their life, how incredibly aware they are of what is happening and how much they are fighting it. It should be enough for every single human to say, this is not something I want to participate in. Because you have seen a being fighting for its life, basically screaming and begging you not to kill them, but there is no one to save them. And it's just it. Until the last second, they basically try to resist what is coming, and then that moment that they're gone. And seeing that was kind of enough for me to be like, I've never seen an animal wanting to die.
No.
And that should be enough for humans to stop eating meat, but somehow it's not. Let's go to your relationship with fish, okay? So that's kind of last meat you given up, right? Because like in my country, we always say that the fish is meat. In America, people don't consider that as a meat. They said like, oh, like it's a fish, that's fish. And I was like, how it's not a meat? It is.
It is.
But anyway, you kind of decided to quit that too. How old were you in that point? And
I must have been around 17 or 18. I was going into college, and pescatarian, it's very doable. I think I had this mindset that veganism was extreme. It was militant. I didn't ever think I would go vegan. And I think every vegan at one point has said this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I said, good for you.
Yeah.
I could never do it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was in Miami visiting two of my friends that live out there for spring break. And we went to the sushi restaurant, and they were asking me, they're like, why are you pescatarian? We're just curious. And I said, because I love animals and I don't want them to suffer. And my one friend who's not vegan, not an animal rights girl, she just said, well, I find it really weird that you say you like animals, but you're eating one right now. Like you ordered a spicy tuna roll and that was an animal. And we got into kind of like a heated little back and forth there. It wasn't comfortable. I was like, please, can I have another margarita? I was really...
She rode you to the corner.
Oh, that bitch really, she came at me, and I'm thinking like, she's not even vegan. Like,
she eats everything.
Yeah, but it was the awakening that I needed because a few weeks later, I decided I was going to go vegan. I was going to cut out, I decided I was going to go vegetarian.
Vegetarian. So you made all the steps necessary, right? Like, that's really good. I went from eating everything to vegetarian immediately. Like, I quit everything, because fish for me always was a meat. So I didn't need that moment. So I went from just eating everything to vegetarian, and then after that, eventually vegan. So you decide to go vegetarian. Okay. And now you're thinking like, oh, I'm saving everyone. I'm not contributing to any cruelty, but joke's on you, Jamie.
Totally. The joke's always on me. I'm like, the more you know. So I'm thinking, vegetarian, I'm doing enough, right? I never considered myself to be this like holier than thou, activisty kind of person. I was not. In high school, I was that girl that knew where all the parties were. My biggest concern was what I was wearing. Okay. So again, this is coming from me. Like, I was like, oh, vegetarian is more than enough. Like, I'll do that and I'll recycle, and that's more than the majority of people.
And I'll recycle. Good.
And then I started learning about the dairy and the egg industries. It was like little things that would come along my way, little comments that would be made. My cousin was out in California. She still lives out there. She was a few years older than me. She's a few years older than me. And anyway, she is vegan, and she's been vegan for over 10 years. But since she's 20 years older than me, we're not really close growing up. But when she found out that I was vegetarian, she was like texting me more. So she's like, you should really look into what happens to the baby cows in the dairy industry or the male baby chicks in the egg industry. And I was like, thinking to myself, what is she talking about? Like, okay, now I can't eat yogurt. Like, this is a lot. I remember being at my grandpa used to have these like brunches every Sunday. We would come over to his house as a family and go, and it was like a bagel brunch, and there were spreads and cream cheese. And, my aunt said to me, she goes, "You're not going to go vegan like Alex in California, right?" And I was like, God, no. I was like, I would be like, what would I eat here at the brunch? No, definitely not. And then a few months later, I decided January 1st of 2018, I was going to do a challenge called Veganuary.
Perfect.
Which is a month-long vegan challenge.
Of course. I love people behind the veganuary, and makes me really happy that you decided to go that route.
Totally.
Many people did. Okay, tell me about that.
Totally. So in that month, I think what was really cool about it was I didn't have anybody telling me what I should be eating or what I should be doing. They really just provided information that I had to then seek out. And so it felt like I was discovering it, which I think psychologically, like, it made me go vegan and stay vegan, because I was like, oh my goodness, like, this is awful. And I want to be kinder to animals. I want to do better. And by leaving them off my plates and leaving their secretions off my plate, that's just a simple way of just not funding these horrible industries. I've been vegan ever since.
Okay. So how long ago was that? Like
going on 6.5 years, I think.
Okay. Amazing. And I want to know, so you decided originally to go vegan and you thought that was a very good decision. I want to know how you felt, like just, any changes about how your body was feeling. And I also want to learn, but we'll get to this, of like, when are you starting to do a little bit of activism, right?
Yeah.
Because like, I don't consider myself an activist, but I know, like, from very little doing to that I'm doing so much more now, and we'll talk more often about it. I want to know your process, and we'll go to all the amazing things that you do. But let's go back to that, like, you're just vegan, how you're feeling and how you're trying to influence others.
Sure. Yeah. So I think because I had cut out meat gradually over time, I noticed that I had more energy and I guess less time spent like digesting these heavy meals. Like when you have this slab of flesh, it does take longer to digest and you feel a little slower. So I think the biggest difference I noticed was cutting out dairy, because it really was very inflammatory. And I just noticed that I think I slimmed down a little bit. My skin got a little better. Like I definitely just had more energy with that. And I think most people experience those kind of benefits.
I so agree with you. For me, dairy was the biggest.
Yeah.
I believed that having a headache is something that every human has to deal with every day of their life. And I could never, ever connect that with dairy, because you don't know. I really firmly believe that we are all lactose intolerant. Just for some people, it's more expressive outside and then immediately can recognize the problem and say, okay, I am lactose intolerant and I'm not doing dairy anymore because of that. But the rest of us, we think we're not lactose intolerant and we are keeping eating dairy, but their body reacts. But we cannot connect to those two. I lived with a headache mostly every day of my life. Like, and I'm not the one that wants to take a pill. Like, I'm really like, I'll suffer because I'm like, I never want a medicine and things like that, because my mom used to cure me with a soup when I was a kid. So never with a actual tablets, drugs, like that's off the, So I lived with a headache for so long, always thinking that that's the most normal thing, like, oh my God, having a headache again. And then I would like sometimes even wake up. So I couldn't connect it with dairy. But then when I stopped eating dairy, my headache kind of disappeared. Like I'll now get a headache once in 6 months, or like, very, very rare. I noticed that change. And I now for a fact know that was what was doing it to me, because it was doing it to my husband Julian too, because he was having headache all the time. And he was after I went vegan, he remained being vegetarian. So after I recognized that is happening, I told him, like, I really think the only reason how my headache is gone, I really think the only reason you're having that, it's dairy, it's hurting you. So he tried, and because he tried multiple times back and forth, and every time he would be like 10 days off dairy and he would be great. And I was like, okay, maybe it's not that. I was like, that's that toxic trait. Let's see what hurts me if it hurts me this one time. And he does it again. He would eat like a cheese or something, like a, milkshake or whatever. And then the next day but within a couple of hours, he'll already start feeling like, or it's a stomach, or it's a headache, and I'm saying like, this is your proof that you are lactose intolerant, not just you, but every single human. It's just our body communicates with us differently. And for me, was through headache. And I know for Julian for a fact that it was also through headache and some people. So I love that I didn't know this about you, that you said dairy was the biggest change for you. For me, dairy was the biggest change too. My skin loved me not drinking.
Oh yeah.
Or I don't think I ever drink milk. That's the weirdest thing in the world. Like a grown ass man eating, like drinking milk. But like dairy products, like a cheese and stuff. But like people drinking milk, that's like.
But let's talk about why it's weird, because I think that people were told as young kids that in order to grow big and strong and to make your bones strong, that you need to have a glass of milk a day. I mean, at least that's what I was taught.
Yeah, same.
And my parents, they would make me put it in a cup and drink it. I had it in my cereal. I mean, we had cheese all the time. And then I'm like 18 years old and I'm just learning that cows don't just produce milk just randomly, that they have to have a baby to produce milk. And so every time I'm drinking that milk, I'm taking it from a baby. Yes. From a baby that's not even a human. That's a cow.
That's what I said. Cow is not giving milk because she's a cow. She's giving milk because she's a mother. A mother.
Yeah.
And that's also, I couldn't also make that connection. And my mom would force me into milk because I didn't like it. I didn't like the taste of milk, like at all. So my mom, worried that I'm going to grow and not going to have a strong bones, she would force me and put a sugar in a milk to make it more appetizing for me, so that I would end up drinking that milk. This, like, we're laughing about this so much. Like, my mom is horrified of what she was doing. But also, again, the ignorance. We just didn't know better. My mom didn't know better. We like grow up in a very small town, so basically a village. We didn't know better. My mom was like, oh, you have to drink milk for the strong bones. And then I didn't want. So she would like even poison me further. Like the milk was poisoning me. But my mom would pour a cane sugar into the milk so that I would drink it, and then I was. But the thing is, like, I didn't want to. I stopped, and I'm the only in my family that never had a broken bone.
Wow.
And my both brothers were drinking milk for their strong bones. I was the only one fighting it, and only one didn't want to do it. And my mom forcing me with the sugar, and me still rejecting it, and stopped that the second I like could say no to things without like parents forcing me. I stopped, and I'm actually the only family member that never had a broken bone.
Well, so. I mean, what the dairy industry and what doctors fail to tell us is that it actually, the places and cities or countries that consume the most amount of dairy have the highest rates of osteoporosis and bone fractures, which shows that, well, maybe dairy isn't so good for strong bones after all, kind of in your experience. But I think the main point is it's like, well, okay, great. It's so great that a plant-based diet can be super healthy and sustain us, and it's awesome. It's better for us, right? But what's really kept me vegan and why I'll always be vegan is for the animals.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you. But I love just, that there's other benefits, because like I think humans are very often more likely to things to resonate with them if affects them directly, not only if affects the animals. But anyway, when it comes to milk, I find out now, I didn't even know about this before, but having kale my name, I actually found out that kale has more calcium per grams than the dairy, than the milk. So kale, it's just incredible. And that can be found more because people were like, calcium. I was like, eat kale. It has more than the milk and doesn't have any of the side effects and, pimples on the skin and all the things
the gas, the bloating.
Bringing. And when you say people that it's that, when I tell them like, oh, well, maybe what it's bothering or like, oh, I'm breaking and things like that. I said like, it's dairy. And they're like, oh my God, no, it's not. And I'm like, then what? It's broccoli, not for sure. Like, because we were meant, the earth gave us broccoli to eat and it's for us. The milk is for a baby cow, not for a human. So, and that proves, like, it just so how weird we are as humans, that we are the only ones who are drinking milk as an adults, and not only that we are not drinking it from our own mom, but we are not drinking even from our own species. No. But so I just love not your mother, not your milk, and literally everyone should live that way.
Mm-hmm. And I'm rooting for people. I'm like, you guys, I want you to feel better. I think it's a much healthier way of living. And I don't feel that you're really sacrificing anything in 2024 when you have so many great plant-based alternatives from almond, oat, soy milk, hemp milk. I mean, there's a million of them. You don't have to resort to the same old option.
Absolutely. But I absolutely firmly believe that dairy causes more damage to the human health than the meat actually does. But that's a whole separate topic. But since we touched the dairy industry, I have to tell you this. I'm just now remembering. I think they're really hurting the dairy industry.
They're so desperate.
Exactly. And you could see, we call it like pulling the last straw, like trying to find, it's a desperation. It's there. Because they're hiring all of these most loved people in the world, like the celebrities that we adore. Like we love Queen Latifah. We love Cardi B. We love, and they're hiring them to try to convince us to go back and drink milk. Because nobody, all of my friends who are not even vegan, they don't want to dairy milk in their coffees. Everybody's preferring the oat milk. So the dairy industry being so desperate is hiring these people, but it's backfiring. It's I've seen on Queen Latifah posts, everyone, not even a vegans are writing her we love you, but this is not it.
This is hitting a real low, Queen Latifah. That is right. But you know what they're doing, right? They're putting all that milk, they're coagulating it and turning it into cheese. So now you have your double cheeseburger that you should go get on every commercial is what they're telling you. And they're sneaking it into all these little products. So it's really, really crazy. And you know how the dairy industry got its big start, right? It happened during World War II and they had way too much milk that they had produced. And so they started forcing it onto people through advertisements. And so that's how we got into the situation that we're in.
Yeah, but it's just now I'm thinking nowadays where majority of the humans were so many coffee shops, I've seen signs saying we are as of now serving automatically oat milk with a coffee, and the reasons majority people just prefers it. So seeing a dairy industry desperation and pulling those lots was we still got milk. It's very sad, but makes me happy.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we're not here to say that we hate farmers or that people that have been living their lives a certain way. This is how they make their living, right? We're here to say, well, actually, let's evolve with the times and let's start farming soy or peas for, pea protein, or if you want to do oats, you could do that. It's slowly but surely transform into a business that is kinder to all, including our planet. And it's just, we can change over time. And that's what we're saying. When we recognize that a business is wreaking havoc on multiple different facets of life, you gotta change. Just because we've done something forever doesn't make it moral or okay.
I want to go back. I love that we covered this topic, but I do want to go back to your activism. So I want to know, when are you starting a little bit more? Did it start with a family member? Did it start with a friend saying like things such as I do, like, oh, how is the dead animal on your plate? Or like we were in the buffet and somebody was picking up things. Like, I was with a friend. I do this only with the people I'm like comfortable doing that. But I was like, oh, like you know that's a dead animal. And then my friends looking was like, what? I was like, when you just grab, you realize that's a dead animal. She was like, yes, I know. And I was like, oh, just giving you an information. So did you start it that way with a friend, with a thing? So like, how does your activism start?
Definitely. So when I first went vegan, I don't even know if anybody truly knew I was vegan. I was super quiet about it. Believe it or your face. Believe it or not. Yeah.
You know that joke, how you know somebody's vegan?
They gotta tell you.
They'll tell you.
Yeah.
So how you kept it quiet?
I think I was quiet about it because I didn't fully know how to verbally explain to people why I was vegan. And, you know, there's so much information that I wasn't super well versed in. And so when we'd go out to eat, I would just kind of like order the option and try to move the conversation away from it. And I remember one time I went to the diner with my friend Julia and her boyfriend at the time, and I got a peanut butter and jelly, and he thought that was like so weird. And he was like asking me a million questions about it, and I got super nervous and flustered, and I was just like, why do you care so much, you know? And then after that, I was like, I really gotta learn the facts and understand, you know, how to express why I'm doing this, you know. And it made me angry because it's like, in the back of my mind, I want to be able to be a voice for the animals, but if I can't even like speak up for them, what am I doing? You know, why am I doing this? So after that moment, I started looking into the information a little bit more. I came across some clips online, Earthling Ed, Joey Carbstrong, James Aspie, Gary Yourofsky was another really amazing one. And also around that time, my cousin, Alex, the vegan.
The vegan from California.
The vegan from California.
Cousin the vegan.
Shout out Alex and her husband, Forrest. She invited me to come and stay with them for a week or two in San Francisco. And I was like, sure, I would love to. And I don't really know any other vegans. And so I think this would be a really great break, you know, from everybody. And I want to see what kind of activism they're doing, because they were doing different demos and whatnot. So I went out there for those 2 weeks, and she took me to my first Cube of Truth. So what that is it's a demonstration where people go in public spaces and they hold TV screens that just show standard practices from the meat, dairy, and egg industries. And it'll also flash to cosmetic testing, the fur industry, animals used in entertainment. And the public, you know, people walk by and they see these practices and they're either confused, they're either horrified, some people just walk by. But it's an opportunity to have an educational conversation with some of these people and maybe change their lives. So I don't know what I'm doing. I can't talk about this in an effective way. I think, you know, I just wanted to watch my cousin do it. And so I was standing in the cube and I was looking out at everybody's faces around us as I'm holding this TV screen. And I was watching my cousin have this conversation with this person. And she started just asking the person questions like, have you seen this footage before? What do you think about it? And how does it make you feel? And with that, she was able to gauge like, okay, this person, you know, is a compassionate person, loves animals, but also eats them. Like, you know, how is that possible? And she did this, and she had this conversation in such a way that was so kind and so compassionate and so just like, I want to help you. And the woman she was talking to went vegan on the spot. And I was just like blown away. I was like, what? How did she do that? I've never been able to effectively communicate this. And so I also during that cube watched some random person come up to her after she had this conversation with the woman, and the person said to her, "Are you Alex? I just want to let you know I've been vegan for the past 8 months since I last met you, since we last spoke." So I'm like, wow, like she's really out here changing lives. I want to do that too. And it gave me this sense of like, you know, I can help this issue. I can really help this issue. I can make a change for the animals. And obviously I went vegan for the animals. And so I just want to pay my dues and speak up about this, because I wish somebody had told me sooner. So I went back to New York, and they have the AV cubes, Anonymous for the Voiceless cubes, in New York every Friday. And I started going to those, and then I was meeting people that were going to other kinds of animal rights demos, from protests to disruptions, a lot of fur protests. And so then I met this one person that asked me if I had ever been to a slaughterhouse vigil. Oh my gosh, even like talking about it, like deep breaths. And I was like, no, like I've never, been to a slaughterhouse or a vigil, or what is that, And he said, well, I'm going this Thursday if you want to go. And it comes to a point in activism where I feel, at least, that sometimes I have to put my discomfort aside for the bigger picture. And this type of activism, going to one of these vigils, that is what changed me, and I think lit the fire under my ass, because I went to the slaughterhouse and there are 2 trucks, double-decker trucks, just like the one that I saw when I was 13 years old. And inside there are cows, there are sheep, and there are goats, and they are looking at you with these like very just sweet, innocent eyes, and they can smell the blood, they can hear the screams from inside. They know exactly what is going to happen to them. And I just, looking back, looking in their eyes, that's when I promised them that I would do everything in my power to always speak up for them. I would never not be silent. And that's how I became the activist that I am today.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Looking at them and saying, I'll try.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do. You said activist that you are today. You are doing incredible things. You go on a street, you go on demonstrations, you have the podcast to educate, you work with PETA, you work with Gen V, right? Like all these organizations pages that they are doing incredible work to help the animals, right? So I do want to talk about your podcast you have 2 different podcasts that you are, I was like, I need to...
Yeah.
It really touched me what you said, so I need to put myself together. I want to talk about two of your podcasts. I was a guest on your Jamie's Corner podcast. When you finish watching this, go ahead and watch the episode with me, because we talked about some incredible things over there. Completely different conversation. But you also have, just so you know, I love the name. Podcast with PETA. Tell me about that.
So these podcasts and what I'm doing today came later on. I think I went through like a really angry period. After seeing these animals on the slaughterhouse trucks, and also doing like undercover investigations and filming, just, horrible. I have like levels of PTSD from it. The things that we're doing to these innocent animals, that I really went through like a tough couple of years where I was just like really losing myself. And I think today I'm at a point where I've found activism that's more sustainable, like the podcast, like the street interviews. But everything, I want to just make it clear that like, if I can do this, anybody can. And I hope the people listening to this, that this inspires them to speak up and get active. If you're vegan or if you're not yet vegan and you want to help animals, there's so many ways that you can get involved. Go to your first protest, go to an AV cube. And I do believe that they will be able to change. The diet part is like the least difficult part about veganism. I think that the most difficult part is just the social, dealing with people asking you a million questions and thinking you're a weirdo and being like the outsider. That's the most difficult. But as you were saying, the podcast today. So I started Jamie's Corner. It was actually originally called Under the Vegfluence. It was a college assignment. I had to create a podcast, and I'm like, well, what do I do a lot in college, and what do I care about? I was like, well, I do drink a lot and in college, and I care about animal rights. So let me do something that combines my two passions.
Good.
I don't drink anymore, to be clear.
Good. Neither do I.
But yeah, at the time I did. And anyway, so I was like, oh, like, let me just have some wine and just let myself ramble on about what's the most pressing issue of our time, which is animal rights. And so it was called Under the Vegfluence. And then over the years, I rebranded it into Jamie's Corner. And the way that Jamie's Corner started was I was working for a film company straight out of college. I was a producer, an editor, and my boss at the time said, what are you doing later tonight? And I was like, well, I'm actually going to an AV Cube. I'm going to speak to people about what's going on. And so he was like, I'd love to come and film it. So I was like, that would be great. Yeah, sure. Come and film it. So he came and filmed some of my conversations. And when we came back and watched the footage, we were cracking up. And I'm like, why am I like this? Like, why do I attract just like the most interesting people? And so he's like, no, there's something here. There is something here. And so we edited an episode together, released it, and it got a lot of people that were engaged. And so it actually surprised me at first. I was like, okay, let me put out some of this content. And I think as activists, we always have to weigh out what's effective and what's not. How can I reach more people, right? So I think I learned that just by being myself and bringing my own personality to the table and my own skill sets, which is, I did acting growing up. And so I was like, okay, I could kind of do the camera stuff. I'm not too shy. And so that is how Jamie's Corner started. And then it's a YouTube show and also a podcast where I interview lovely people like you and all sorts of amazing individuals creating impact for animals. And then I was, in the past year, PETA approached me to host their new podcast, which is called Just So You Know. And it's more of a data heavy podcast where we delve deep into campaigns that PETA's working on and issues such as like the circus. We just did Shriners Circus, and we'll go into the history of how circuses started and how many animals are involved, the scale of the problem, and what's going on today with it. How are we doing on the progress scale to end that? We did one on Elon Musk and his company Neuralink, which tests on animals. And so we go into the history of that. So we really look at companies and their corruption and how they put profits over ethics over and over and over again.
Okay, good. Wonderful podcast. People should check it out.
Thank you.
I want to say now this, Jamie, you sometimes get in trouble from your activism. Recently, you were Jamie arrested. So,
Jamie arrested.
Tell me, how did Jamie Logan got arrested and for what?
Sure, I would love to. So this is a story for you. So I'm always down to, shake things up when needed. And what better thing to raise awareness about than the dairy industry and what's going on in the dairy industry. So there's an amazing organization based in the UK called speciesism.wtf. And this run by this woman, Stephanie Lane. And she uses art to draw people in and spread awareness. And I think art is an amazing medium to convey our message and to educate. I love art, all forms of art, from film to paintings to street art to music. I think we need to use it all. So she came up with these art installations, which the first one she ever did was an AI woman with funnels on her boobs, with tubes coming out of her boobs and these big milk gallons on it. And it was to show what's happening to dairy cows, female cows, and compare it to, well, this is what it looks like if it were happening to a human. And it's so messed up. You're like looking at this thing, you're like, what is this? And it's like, well, wait, if we're not okay with this happening to a person, why are we okay with this happening to a cow? Or anyone for that matter. So she decided to take this billboard, this image that she made, and turn it into real life. So in the UK, all over Europe actually, she had women standing in public places, outside of museums. It was, again, an art installation.
Yeah, it's art and it's very peaceful.
Very peaceful. And what it is you have these 3 women that are kind of in the nude. You're wearing nude undies, a nude top, and then you have these funnels that are hooked up to the suction cups, and it's to show that you're like being milked. It's a little risque for sure. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, bravo to these women. Like, they are bold. They are brave. I don't know if I would do that. And then she calls me and she's like, hey, well, you want to bring this to New York? I'm like, damn it. Okay. I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. So I organize a group of girls in New York to do this with. And we decide that since it's very cold outside, we should do it inside, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's freezing. I don't want to be standing outside in 20-degree weather. Well, train stations have their own set of rules. And I'm learning every day as an activist, okay? I really should have spoke to a lawyer beforehand and looked into what these rules are. But we decided to storm Grand Central. I was just thinking in my head, I was like, we're going to get a great picture out of this. We're going to get a lot of attention. And what could go wrong, right? And I mean, whatever.
To me, it seemed like a very peaceful sort of activism. Like nothing like other things you have done that we'll talk about. But continue.
Okay. So, so we storm in and we're in these robes. And then we let the robes go. And then you see our whole little outfit going on. And then our friend Rachel, who is playing the quote unquote human farmer, was saying, look at my lovely women. They came from the human milk factory. And it was to just juxtapose the two. What if this were happening to human beings, how would you feel? I mean, because it's happening to cows every single second of every single day. So within like 3 minutes, we have like a huge crowd around us. I mean, it was really wild. People were shocked. They were like, what is going on here? And within just a couple of minutes, the police show up. And they come over and they told our friend Rachel, they're like, you got to put the bullhorn down. There are no bullhorns allowed in here. So she said, okay, no problem. And she just proceeded to give her little speech to the crowd without the bullhorn. So we said, that's fine. Then we had this one woman, Christina, lying down in front of the 3 of us. And she was the cow, the downed cow. She had like a little sleeve on. Again, it's a little abstract looking, but so they told her, you can't be lying down here. You're obstructing the flow of traffic. Which I'm thinking to myself, there's people sitting down on the steps over there. There's a guy with a needle in his arm and you're worried about her lying down here obstructing traffic? Come on. Okay, she gets up, she stands up. So we're still standing there. We have our signs. It says milk is not humane. Human, and then with the E actually at the end in print. So they come over to us and they said, you girls gotta leave. And we said, okay, we'll leave. So we unchain ourselves. We were chained to each other and we proceed to start walking out. And I noticed that they're like talking, they're like not letting our other 2 friends leave. So we're just kind of waiting for our other 2 friends to finish talking with them. And the photographer is, taking a few more pictures of us. People want pictures with us. Then the cops start coming over and apparently we didn't leave fast enough. So next thing you know, I'm cuffed. I got my hands tied behind my back and I'm cuffed. And it was honestly the first moment that I feel that I was able to relate to that inability to have any sort of freedom, kind of like the cows. Like I felt like I was in that situation with no bodily autonomy. So then my friend Justina, who was one of the girls that was doing the demo with me, she ends up managing to get away a little bit. And so I was like, go. Cause I was like, I'll just be the one to go to jail. I don't want her to as well. And then they started chasing after her. And then they threw us in a cell together in Grand Central Station. And next thing you know, we're like, well, we're here. We might as well make the best of the situation. And we start outreaching the cops, asking them, well, do you know why we're here? What we're doing? And we asked, are you against factory farming? How do you feel about this? And by the end of it, they were loving us. They were like following our podcast. And it was very I think the arrest actually is what made it blow up so much on social media because it's like, we're not doing anything.
It's just birthed. It's the most iconic picture. It's a cop holding your milk gallon next to you, and you're just like with a sign, and it's just such an iconic moment. And I think that helped create such an incredible buzz around the situation. So I'm glad you're safe and you guys get out, right? Get lawyers and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I just think of it this way. Nothing is as bad as what the animals are going through. Yeah. And if I could do something like this that just at the very least helps to raise awareness, then that's what I'll do. And some people might say, oh, that's really extreme. That's really wild and kind of militant of you. I mean, and they might say, well, I don't think that that's the most effective way. Well, my answer to that is, well, I'm trying to get media on this. People don't want to look at this stuff. Yeah. So one way to do that is by doing these type of more extreme actions because otherwise it's just the status quo and everybody ignores it and closes their eyes to it. And
I want to go to the more extreme action, at least to me, because what you get arrested for to me really doesn't sound like you did something really to cause that. This other thing, like I feel you should have been arrested and you probably were not, but
Which one?
I'll tell you about. That's how I got aware who you are. And I've seen that video. Some of your videos have like 8, 9, 10 millions of views. Your girl are going viral often, and I love that. There is a video of you, Jamie, interrupting a Coach fashion show with your sign, Leather Kills. What is so iconic about that interruption is that you are giving much better performance and modeling on that runway than the actual models. You slayed.
Oh, God.
Okay? So it's like you were walking. Were you a model? Like you?
No.
Like you look like you had much more experience than their actual models. And that's why I find that video so damn funny because the model in front of you, it's like barely knows how to hold that runway and like it's walking like she had some issues. And then you're behind her slaying it with your little sign and going like, foot in front of the foot. It's going and it's like Leather Kills. So you were not arrested for that.
I was not arrested for that. To be honest with you, I was just.
I would arrest you for that more than the like art installation in the city.
You would think, right? That was very impactful because it got the conversation started about leather. I mean, Vogue Business after this was writing about leather and the environmental impacts of it, the cruelty of it, and this went totally international. And I don't think I was actually thinking that through. I was just very focused on, let me make sure the sign is upright. Let me try not to trip and fall because I do that a lot. I fall.
No, you look
and
like
heels.
Professional runway model.
Oh, thank you. I was really just trying to play the part. I'm like, I usually before an action, I'll watch some type of animal footage and I just bring myself back to this is the reality, this is what's happening, and that lights the fire under me where I'm like, I need to get this message out there and I will do that by any means necessary. And so when it came to crashing this Coach runway fashion show, I was like, well, they're using a lot of cow skins and everybody wants to act like this is just another fabric. But the reality of it is, no, this came from a living individual that fought for their lives, that does not want to be, that wants to wear their own skin. And so I'm here to bring their voice up into the conversation. And so I did crash that runway show. I was with this girl, Sasha, who was actually body painted. So that added for a nice visual. She was topless and just literally had paint over her. And I walked behind her. She was body painted. She was a skinned animal. And then I walked behind her with a sign that said, Coach Leather Kills. And it was just as simple as that. It kills. We're not actually talking about the environment here. We're just talking about the fact that it killed someone, that those products killed someone. And after I did the action, we walked around 4 bends, which is wild. I mean, I can't believe I was up there for that long. I don't fully know what I was expecting. When you do these type of high risk actions, your mind just kind of goes into autopilot and I'm just focused on doing it. And then at one point I was like, thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm still up here. I might as well have fun with it. I did a little spin. I was winking at people in the audience.
You were a star, and I loved it, and that's how I got familiar with you. I do want to ask you another thing now. You were recently on a show of Piers Morgan, right? I would not know of that man if he was not inviting vegans to argue with them on his show. Is he Australian? Is his show in where is his show going?
He's in the UK.
Oh, okay, UK. What's his problem with vegans and why he invites vegans to his show and then doesn't let them speak? But you kind of made a really good point over there.
Thank you.
Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, that was so wild. I always wonder, I'm like, well, I don't know how he came across my stuff. I don't know if it was from the Grand Central disruption about dairy or what, but I got an email from his team, and I know Pierce he's got very controversial opinions, and he sometimes will have vegans on. It's like, for a guy that says he hates vegans so much, he certainly gives us a lot of airtime.
Like all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, what's wrong with him? Mm-hmm. It's a little obsessed.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, sure, I want to go on, because I'm like,
I think he feels very guilty.
Yeah.
Like, I really think that's what the thing is. Because, like, why would you keep bringing vegans on your show so you can prove your point and be like, oh, but this or that? And I will talk. We have the game today where I will be against veganism and question you. And I feel those things that he does, it's like a nonstop, and it's like turning into obsession. But I'm glad you were part of it.
Definitely. Thank you. Any chance that I have to get this message mainstream and to reach more non-vegans, I will absolutely take him up on that. And I feel confident now in my activism where I would love to debate somebody on these topics.
Perfect. Well, you will debate me.
Great. Bring it on, honey.
Before we do that, I want to very quickly to ask you, you were a lead role in a Next Girl movie, right? Yeah. Just tell me about what it's a movie about and how people can watch it.
Yeah, sure. So you can watch it free on YouTube or Unchained TV. And it's a short film, and it's about a young adolescent girl who is born into an oppressive industry. It's like takes place in a dystopian world where she is forcefully impregnated. Her baby is taken away from her. And then it's like this vicious cycle of that happening over and over again to women. And what the movie does is it juxtaposes the dairy industry from a human perspective.
That's what is happening to,
Yeah. And so I got to play the Next Girl and just really channel like what's happening. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier on using art to get this message across. Because I think somebody watching the film is going to really connect with the human element of it and feel the pain that I'm going through as that character. And then at the very end, you realize, wait, this is actually a true story and it's happening to cows. And the question is, do you still feel that same empathy? And why or why not? Would you feel that if it were a dog?
Yeah.
So...
well, great. I'm happy. I hope people go and watch the movie. I do want to ask you something else, because you were just recently moderating a panel on Harvard University. That's huge. So how did you get to, speak about, plant-based future at the Harvard University?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I never thought my name, Jamie, and Harvard would ever be in the same sentence. But yeah, this past weekend, I went to Harvard for a festival called the Food for Thought Festival, which is a student-run food festival. And they have speakers from all over, CEOs of companies, of CEOs of nonprofits coming in to just discuss the food system as a whole and also how we can improve it. And so there were many people from the plant-based space, but also people that were not from the plant-based space. So it led for some very important conversations to be had. And so I was moderating the panel on impactful advocacy, and it was just with a few different organizations that have different approaches. So one was the Reducitarian Foundation, and they really focus on just getting people to at least start with eating less meat. And then there was another organization called New Roots, which people go into schools and talk to students about factory farming. And then the other one was Pro Veg International, which they do a lot of fundraising and they get into politics and just try to change legislation. Everybody's doing really great work. And I like to just say that it's a mix of different things. Like, you might look at my form of activism and be like, whoa, that's a lot. I can't do that. Well, as I told you guys, I started off not even telling people I was vegan. So I think it's just a matter of find a form of actions that fit you, fit your personality, something that you're comfortable with, and just try it. Just do something, because doing nothing is no good.
I absolutely agree with you. I love you mentioned that people telling you a lot. It's literally how I started this podcast. It's to just bring a light to the extraordinary stories, as you really absolutely is. So people never feel like they're a lot or they're too much, right? Have people called you extra and too much and those things? And
my whole life. And now I'm just at least hopefully turning it into something that's useful for the world.
Embracing it. That's what I want people to embrace. Okay, before I challenge you on all of these arguments against veganism that I have, I just want to ask you the simplest possible question. Why you are vegan and why people should go vegan?
That's, so many reasons. I'm vegan because I believe that it is the single biggest thing that we can do at an individual level to reduce suffering in the world. And it's just, for me, simply aligning the morals and values that I have and that I hold for all living beings, and just aligning it with my actions every single day. And I think that people should go vegan because it's an issue that extends to so many different topics. It's a human rights issue, because when you look at who's working inside of these slaughterhouses, who's living around these factory farms, it's horrific. When you look at the environmental toll, the environmental destruction from the ocean's dead zones to the rainforest deforestation to water depletion. It's really scary, the times that we're facing. And then also, not only that, but health. I think if people want to live longer, healthier lives where they feel better, veganism is totally the right way to go. And for so many other reasons.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jamie. Now I'm going to challenge that. Okay. And I'm going to pick one of those. Those are all arguments against veganism. Okay. And I'm going to start with, let's say, argument against veganism number 3. Plants have feelings too.
I love this one.
What do you say?
This is a classic one that everybody's throwing out there now. Okay, so my first question for you would be, do you think that plants have a central nervous system, a brain, or a spinal cord?
There's no for me to think. It's a fact. They don't.
Okay.
It's science.
So point blank period, plants do not have the ability to feel pain. However, even if we wanted to save more plants, let's just say that you're a plant activist and you want to save more plants, you can actually do that by going vegan, because we grow the majority of crops to feed the 80 billion farmed animals that we breed into existence every year. So if you want to reduce suffering and actually save more plants, the best thing you could do is to go vegan, because if everybody were vegan, we'd be eating less plants to begin with, because we wouldn't have 80 billion mouths to feed.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also want to add one more thing.
Yeah.
So I love this comparison where it's like, let's say you're driving in a car and you see a deer jump out, or you see a field of grass. The question is, would you just go straight into the deer, or would you veer onto the grass?
Grass.
Exactly. And so that right there just shows this innate compassion that we have for animals. And I almost find it disrespectful for people to compare plants and animals. It's like, really, guys?
It's just a big argument against it. But
Yeah.
Are you ready for next one?
Yeah.
Okay, you win this one, okay?
Yes.
So Jamie 1, Neman 0, okay? Argument number 1 against veganism. Argument number 1 against veganism. Vegans kill more animals than non-vegans in the crop deaths and things like that. So mice died, the squirrels, rats, snakes. So what do you say, Jamie, to that? Do vegans kill more animals than non-vegans do?
I think the first thing to note is the definition of veganism, which is to reduce suffering to as far as is practically possible. You're not going to be perfect. There is no way to live a perfect life if you are just simply alive, but you can reduce suffering. So when it comes to crop deaths, the most amount of crops that are being grown and the most amount of fields that are cleared are to actually feed farmed animals. So
about 90 million a year, right?
To feed about 80 billion farmed animals a year.
Billion, yes.
Yeah. And so when you want to reduce the amount of crop deaths, mice, insects, you can actually do that on a vegan diet because you're using a lot less land to grow that food, and you're also not having to then feed farmed animals. So I like to always say, well, meat eaters are not only responsible for the animals that they're eating and that death, but they're responsible for all of the animals that had to die to feed that animal that then they're eating. So if you want to reduce suffering, you could go vegan. And also there's studies that show that mice don't just sit around as tractors come and plow these fields. They run. I mean, there's many studies that show that there are not as many crop deaths as people are saying. And it still far outweighs the amount of the amount of animals killed in animal agriculture is still far more than the amount of crop deaths.
I could not agree more. Jamie 2, Neman 0. Yes. Okay, let's do argument against veganism number 6. It says, our ancestors did it for thousands and thousands of years. It is tradition of my family. It's been tradition for years. That's why I want to eat meat. What do you say to that, Jamie?
I would say that tradition and culture doesn't always justify continuing a lifestyle or a habit that causes harm and suffering to others. So for many years, we owned people. We had slaves. And as time went on, people realized, well, this might not be such a good thing to do. This is not so nice, right? They evolved. And so it's the same that comes with this, where it's like, we do not need to keep doing this to animals. We don't need to do this for survival. And I think that there's this concept where people think people ate meat all the time. People were hunters and gatherers, and studies show that most people actually gathered. It wasn't as much meat as people really think it was. And now in 2024, we're living in a time where we can go into a grocery store and choose products that fuel us, that give us life, that are healthy, and we don't need meat to survive. So I think when it's a survival thing, it's based on a different moral justification, as opposed to people just eating these products out of pure gluttony.
Yeah. And now when you're mentioning that about the things that we used to do for 1,000 years, like a woman had not right to speak, to talk, and look at you today on my podcast, fighting all of these arguments. So just the fact that something has been done for thousands of years does not mean that it's right.
Exactly.
Good. Well, very good argument, Jamie. I like it. Jamie 3, Neman 0. Okay.
Thank you.
We will say argument against veganism number 11 would be humans have dominion over animals and are more intelligent. Because we are more intelligent, we have right to exploit them. What do you say?
I would say, does might make right? So just because you're stronger than another individual, does that mean that you can hurt them? And I just don't, I feel that the strong should defend the weak and defend the innocent. And so I don't think, and I also, my question to that would be, who said that we have dominion? I truly believe that all living beings have a right to be here and live on this earth and experience the sunlight and grass under their feet. I mean, it's this really arrogant way of thinking, and this really just, if that's what, having might means, I don't want anything to do with that. I think we should be defending the weak and the innocent. And if we were going to say, oh, just because animals aren't as smart as us, my answer to that would be, well, there's human beings that have mental disabilities. And so does that make it okay to harm them just because they might not have the same thinking processes as you? So, and children too are not as smart as, until they get older. So does that make it okay? We should eat them? It doesn't really add up. And pigs are smarter than dogs, by the way. So.
Okay, well, you win this argument, Jamie, too.
Yes.
I'm going to go with this one. It's an argument against veganism number 8.
Okay.
It's unhealthy. We need meat to survive. We need a protein. We cannot sustain our bodies off the plants. So what do you say now, Jamie?
Well, top scientists and doctors have come out and said that you can thrive and survive on a plant-based diet, that you can get everything that you need solely from plants. You do not need animal products. I think people have this misconception that animals are like this reservoir of nutrients. And I always ask people, I'm like, where did the animals that you're eating get their protein from, get their B12 from, get all of their nutrients from? Plants. Those animals ate plants. And the strongest animals in the world, the elephant, the silverback gorilla, hippos, they're eating plants.
Yeah.
They're actually eating plants. And
One of the biggest, one of the strongest, all of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you also look now, I mean, there's a great documentary called Game Changers. If you don't believe me, watch a documentary called Game Changers and look at how top athletes, even the strongest man in the world, I think his name is Patrick.
Yes, I follow him on Instagram. Yeah.
He's amazing. And he is the strongest man in the world. He's completely vegan.
I cried when he broke that record
Yes.
for the strongest, basically strongest man on earth who holds and he's been vegan almost his entire life, and he dropped that and screamed vegan power, and like tears started coming.
Well, these are people that are winning championships, that are exceeding, they're in their categories. They're winning. They're amazing. And so the point is, it's like, well, if top athletes can be vegan and can be plant-based, it's like, I'm sure it's good enough for most of you that just sit around all day and watch your TV shows. And it's obviously, I think if you're eating potato chips all day, you can call yourself a vegan and then say, I don't feel good. It's like, well, yeah, you're not going to feel great if that's what you're eating.
Yeah, but also when it comes to meat, people love to like argue that with me. When I often will think that that's unhealthy way to go, because it's somebody else's body. Like how a dead piece of a dead flesh. Like imagine going to sleep and there's like a dead animal inside of you. There's some part of somebody's dead body inside of your stomach and you're going to bed with that. How can that be healthy? How can anyone think that that's better than like broccoli?
Yeah.
So it's wild.
The hormones, the chemicals, the cortisol.
Gets, yes.
Like people don't realize that these animals fight for their lives in the slaughterhouse. They have so much cortisol, which is a stress hormone, running through their bodies that then that ends up in your body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Abso-freaking-lutely. So your body is now fueled with these like horrible vibes. It's really, really bad vibes. And this fear, this suffering. And I've always...
I heard it gets trapped in a fat tissue, like their fear before they die, and that's what humans consume.
Absolutely. I like to say now that my body is not a graveyard. It's a garden.
Oh,
right?
That's beautiful.
I think, well, I didn't make that one up. I heard it.
Whoever said that beautifully. I love that. Honestly, I cannot argue with that one, okay? Because I agree with you. You won. But listen, I feel like I'm about to win, okay? Because I feel, Jamie, you'll not be able to defend this one, okay? Argument against veganism number 7. Lions do it and other animals eat animals. Okay, so circle of life, Jamie.
Actually, it's the circle of torture.
And death.
And death. I see that you're wearing clothes, okay? Yeah. I see that you have a cell phone and that you drove a car to get here. Oh, and I also see that you didn't sniff my ass when I walked in here. Like lions and tigers do. It's really unfair to take one action that lions and tigers do. We don't want to compare any of our other actions except for this one and say, well, just because lions and tigers do it, I should do it too. So yeah, I think that we should recognize that we're human beings. We're different from lions and tigers. And we should recognize that we can go into a supermarket and pick amazing produce and plant-based options from the supermarket.
Wow, I really thought I had you on this one, Jamie, but good job. Yes, the compassion would be, it's beautiful. But now I have a question. It's not even an argument against veganism, but like what vegans often get asked for. What if you, Jamie, are stuck on a desert island?
Well, what if you were living in a society and a civilization that had grocery stores with fresh produce and kind options? That's my question. And if you really, really want to know what I would do if I were on a deserted island, I would probably follow the animals that are on there to their source of nutrition, where are the plants at? Because if I just eat that one animal, then they're gone, and then I would die shortly after. And it's just such a really weird, random situation. It's like people will come up with all these like what ifs. It's like, well, I'm not on a deserted island, and neither are you. And so, but even if I were on a deserted island, I would not eat an animal. I couldn't.
Yeah, I feel you. I
would die.
So, I don't know. I don't want to go with what I would do, but I do justify it. And I if it's survival, like I'm like all for it. I watched recently the movie from I don't know what it's called, but it's actually based on a really true story from Uruguay, when they crashed into the mountain and lived there for 72 days. And some of them did not survive. So the other people subjected to cannibalism and ate each other to survive 72 days on a mountain where they were trapped. And when these poor people were finally found 72 days later in a snow mountain, people judged them for eating each other and talk awful things about them. And I said, listen, like, I am not there to judge that. That's like a pure survival mode on. That's an actual survival mode. Like, you're fighting for your life.
Okay, well, let me just say.
And somebody else already died.
I would hate to be on a deserted island with you.
Okay, but it is, that's...
I hear what you're saying. I gotcha.
So they never hurt each other. They never like ate each other. But if I were on a deserted island with you and I was dying, I would literally ask you to eat me. And that's what they were doing too. They were like, please use my body. Because in that's a full survival mode on. And that's where I'll like never argue myself and think that that's what they did. It's like horribly wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it is horribly wrong when, as you said, we have grocery stores, restaurant menus in front of you, and then you're going to be comparing what lion does to survive in the jungle.
Right.
Like, oh, come
People
on,
will go to a restaurant, right? And I'm like, there's 5 vegan options, like right here on this menu that are great. And then they choose the non-vegan option and say, oh, it was so much harder. And also that vegan option is cheaper.
Yeah, that's my next argument.
Oh.
So let me fight you on that. Argument against veganism number 2. It's expensive.
Well, what are the cheapest foods in the grocery store? Seasonal vegetables, potatoes, rice, beans, lentils, legumes. Those are the cheapest foods. So if you really want to, tofu's $2. If they add a block of tofu, you could get a block of tofu that's 75 grams of protein. It's freaking awesome. There's ways that it could get expensive if you're buying fancy vegan cheeses and, some of the fancy vegan meats. Okay, maybe. But it's like saying, well, a meat eater that goes to a steakhouse 3 times a week, that's expensive, right? So it's just like how you live your lifestyle. If I'm going out to eat all the time, sure, maybe. But veganism is the cheapest diet out there. In developing nations, a lot of them are actually predominantly plant-based because meat is a luxury in those places.
I feel you, Jamie. You're making a good point. But for me, it's a personal choice. That's an argument against veganism. Sure. It is a personal choice. What do you say to that?
Yes, absolutely. If it's a personal choice, as you're saying, why not choose to be kind? Why not choose the option that doesn't cause another being to suffer? I personally don't know how personal that choice is, though, if somebody else has to suffer at the end of the day. Like for me, a personal choice is, okay, I'm going to wear this white shawl. That's my, it's my personal choice. I'm making that choice. But if I have to take this, pretend it's like skin and I have to take from an animal, it's not really that personal anymore because it's a skin from another being. But also, what about that animal's choice to live?
Yeah.
What about that personal choice?
I have no argument against that. I feel like as long as as when your personal choice affects other being, it just turns into not personal choice but pure cruelty. Because many other things like a murder, it's a personal choice too.
Yeah.
So I really think that was a pure excuse. I'm even sorry I used it, but that's what people say. So I want to ask you about this argument against veganism. Number 5, when people tell me, would be, oh, but I buy a humane raised meat, or like animal had a good life before we killed them, or tell me about that.
Sure. So, the definition of humane is to show compassion or have benevolence. And so to put the word humane and slaughter in the same sentence is kind of an oxymoron. It doesn't really make too much sense. And I always like to ask people, well, would you want this done to you? Because if you wouldn't want it done to you, then chances are it's not really that humane. And so the point is that when we have options where we don't have to choose any sort of slaughter, whether it's a bolt gun, whether it's a knife, whether it's whatever other option you're talking about, quote unquote humane. We don't have to choose that because we have so many other plant-based options to choose from. So it's not a, this or that. It's simply like you can just choose one that doesn't cause the suffering, which is the most humane thing to do.
Okay, but argument against veganism number 4 is God puts them there for us.
Why would God make them with the ability to feel pain, with the central nervous system? Like an all-loving God would not be okay, I think, with the factory farms that we have set up today, with the system that we have in place today, right? So it's like, are slaughterhouses the works of God or the works of the devil, I think. And I think, like, who said that? Like, a lot of quotes in the Bible.
Many people.
I know, but it's like a lot of quotes in the Bible say that God gave us the seeds and the fruits and the it doesn't say necessarily anywhere in the Bible that you have to eat meat. God doesn't demand that.
No, we together watched the movie Christspiracy, which I highly recommend to everyone, where it basically goes to the point that there is absolutely no compassionate way or godly way to kill someone, because the God would absolutely be against it. And just the fact that we have so much food that we don't have to do that. I really think God is not pleased what we humans are doing on Earth. And I think that's why we have diseases and wars and all the awful things that are happening on the planet. It's because we are causing many of those things, and we are causing the suffering. And we decided that animal is commodity, and we decided that we are so entitled to be bringing them into existence, so we can basically put them through so much pain and suffering just to kill them.
Right.
So they finish on the plate. That's devil behind that, not God.
Mother Nature's fighting back. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really like when we have all these facts, the science is on our side. Mother Nature is saying we cannot keep doing this. It's just the only logical answer is to go vegan. And then from there, you can fight for all different causes. I really do feel that it's the bare minimum. It's simply like, you know what? I don't need to eat you. I'm going to leave you off my plate, and then I could be at a protest for something else. You don't, compassion is endless. You don't have to choose this or that. People ask me all the time, they're like, well, why don't you care about humans? Why don't you fight for humans? And it's like, who says I don't care about humans?
Yeah, of course.
My compassion extends to all living beings. And that's why I'm vegan. And why you should be too. It doesn't end there. It actually, veganism opened my eyes to so much more and made me care about so many other issues.
Perfect. I love how ready you are. And honestly, every argument that was given over here, it's just you destroyed with facts. Because everything you're saying, it's very, very truthful. And I really hope, people will stay around and listen to this, because I, as I said, could not dedicate a better episode to veganism than the one with you, because you are a huge inspiration, and what you do is absolutely amazing. And we speak for animals because they cannot speak for themselves, but if they could, they would say thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
And I want to say that on behalf of all the animals, thank you for the wonderful job that you are doing to create a more compassionate world. And I'm with you, and I'll always be there for you. And I do want to ask you, the very last question is, if there's anything else that you would like to say, that's the number one. And number two is, I want to you to tell people how they can connect with you.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your kind words. I'm always learning and growing as an activist, and I want to make it very clear that anybody can do this, and that the animals need us speaking up for them, because this is urgent. They are dying now, and this is the single most pressing issue that is happening right now at the scale that it is happening. And so this is something that anybody can get on board with. And I appreciate people taking the time to listen to this, because if I can change, really anybody can. And we just got to keep trying different things. And so if people wanted to follow me and connect, they could go to It's Jamie's Corner on Instagram, see some of the stuff I'm up to, and just don't forget, guys, like there is a lot of work still left to do. So please get involved and get active.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for, coming all the way from New York. It's going to have a lot of fun in Chicago, but it was important conversation that we just needed to have.
Thank you for giving me the platform to speak.
Whew. People, you heard all of this. It's just incredible, extraordinary, inspiring story from Jamie Logan, a wonderful animal rights activist. I really hope this helps some people. I know a lot of people who are watching this already be vegan, but please share with your family members, share with your friends, learn about all these topics that Jamie spoke about. So when people argue against veganism with you, that you can have the facts and you can be educated about it. So hopefully we, change the world and save the animals one meal at a time. So thank you so much for tuning in today. And always remember, if anyone tells you that you are too much, you'll tell them to go and find less. I love you.